For people of a certain mindset, who I refer to as the woke, the modern world is somewhat problematic because everything other than their own ideology, to them, is seen as racist and or transphobic. We'll get back to that. It must be a very strange way to live one's life, to wake up every morning desperate to find something new to be offended by. Now, I am far from thin, but I go walking most days. I enjoy being out in nature, I get to record videos for you lovely people, and I'm hoping that by doing regular exercise, I won't end up on one of those documentaries where the council have to cut the roof off someone's house so they can be craned out. But as we will see, apparently being critical of someone's weight could mean that you're a racist.
Here's your reminder that fat phobia is rooted in racism. As always, if you haven't read this book, go do that. The main thing to understand is that for the last 300-ish years, white folks have been marketing fatness as a black trait. And this is regardless of whether or not black people individually were actually fat. That was irrelevant. The message they spread was that black women specifically were ravenous and uncontrollable, and these barbaric traits made them fat. On the flip side, thinness was marketed as a white trait. Again, regardless of whether or not individual white people were actually thin, that was irrelevant. The idea was that white women specifically were refined and restrained, and this led them to having delicate, thin bodies. Over the years, these messages have become more subtle, but even today, they are still very prevalent in conversations around race, health, capitalism, and poverty. Here's your reminder that fat phobia is...
I haven't read that book, nor am I going to, because I suspect it will be nothing but blatant race baiting. And I can't speak for the last 300 years, but I can remember the 1980s. Live Aid, Comic Relief, etc. This was the Western world raising money for Africa, and of course in Africa the people are predominantly black. This aid wasn't to be spent on leafy salads and thigh masters to keep people in shape. The issue was, and still is in parts of Africa, that the people who haven't died of AIDS tend to be very good at starving to death. Thus, in 40 seconds, I believe I've undermined the entire argument. What I think is happening is that our blue-haired friend is rationalising her own obesity, because let's be blunt, she is rather portly. I think she's convinced herself that if she went for a walk, or God forbid, a jog, or if she tried driving past her local McDonald's rather than going straight in, that if she lost weight, somehow that would make her a white supremacist. So if being morbidly obese means you're not a racist, we're about to see the least racist person on the face of the earth.
I have good news. I put on 2 more inches around my belly. I wasn't able to measure my stomach for ages because it's over 60 inches and most measuring tapes only go up to 60, but I got too sexy for them, so I had to order in a special extra big one to go around my belly.
It never ceases to amaze me the delusions people will kid themselves with, because that lass, who I'm assuming has a part-time job as a wrecking ball, thinks that being that size is somehow sexy. Now, I'm sure she gets a lot of attention, because, given the size of her, if she spins on the spot, she'll generate her own gravity. What I'm wondering is, which is under greater strain, her underwear or her heart? Either way, I'll be surprised if either of them makes Christmas. The thing is, though, there are some men who'll be really into that. I guess they're guys who are just obsessed with value for money. Although, given that she's the size of 2 regular people, I guess if you fucked her, you could claim you'd had a threesome. That's not for me, though. If I were a single man, I wouldn't want to be thinking, I'm going to pick up my date, where can I hire a forklift? And it's not just fat phobia that's been dreamt up by white-skinned devils like myself. We also invented, drum roll please, the gender binary.
That did not adhere to a gender binary prior to being colonized. My own is one of them. Mm-hmm. We did not have a gender binary prior to being colonized, and before Christianity and Mormonism and Catholicism were brought to my people. So before that, prior to that, we didn't adhere to anything like that.
And gender is a racial construct.
Period.
So what it means to be an Indian woman, a Samoan woman, a white woman is different and culturally contingent.
Absolutely.
I grew up with strong, badass, hairy brown women. And that wasn't a violation of their femininity.
Absolutely.
But oftentimes I think when we're saying look like a woman or act like a woman, what we're saying is look or act like a white woman.
Period.
Are we meant to believe that before the Crusades, the entire Islamic world was made up of gender non-conforming, non-binary they-thems. But once the Christians arrived, it was time to bring in the burqa. And why are they talking about the Mormons? What did they have to do with colonialism? The Mormons are just a strange Christian splinter group who make Jehovah's Witnesses look normal. Relatively. And using what I will laughingly call that logic, that would mean there were no gender roles in ancient Egypt. I thought the roles of pharaohs and their queens were quite famous. Of course, most of the queens of the pharaohs were actually the sisters of the pharaohs. That's why Tutankhamun had so many health problems, because of inbreeding. I can talk about being inbred because I'm from Norfolk. Thus far, we've heard the arguments that not being morbidly obese is a form of white supremacy, and that oppressors who are the same colour as me invented the gender binary, or reality as the rest of us know it. So let's briefly touch on another current topic. Who should and shouldn't be allowed in female-only spaces?
The problem is not now, nor ever was it, trans women and girls in the washrooms. Okay? The problem is, and always has been, cis men lurking in our washrooms in order to predate on women and children. Okay? It's always been the cis men. It's not the trans people. So stop trying to stigmatize and ostracize trans women and girls from, just feeling safe when you gotta pee. That's what we all want.
For the most part, I agree with her. It won't be genuine trans people who are the problem. People who used to be known as transsexuals. No, it'll be the cross-dressing perverts wanting to get access to women and children. Now, with that in mind, here is a direct quote from the chap we recently saw talking about colonialism. These days, the narrative is that transgender people will come into bathrooms and abuse little girls. The supposed purity of the victims has remained stagnant. There are no princesses. Little girls are also kinky. Your kids aren't as straight and narrow as you think. To me, that doesn't sound like someone who should be around women and children. That sounds like someone who should have to report his whereabouts to the police at all times. Someone who shouldn't be allowed within 100 yards of a playground. Because it sounds like he's victim blaming. That if a little girl gets molested, she was sort of asking for it. This will be the type of man who, upon hearing that a woman has been sexually assaulted, will immediately ask, what was she wearing? In my opinion, and I have nothing to back this up, it feels like he's doing the groundwork. In case, if at some point in the future he's caught doing something he shouldn't be, he can scream racism. Also, in my opinion, the woman at the start of the video, she's just in denial. It's easier for her to think she's not being a white supremacist than to admit she's just fat and lazy. But, in the interest of balance, the final clip I have coming up is of a white person who is both obese and also challenging the gender binary. I've muted this clip, firstly because having it silent amplifies the horror we're about to witness, and secondly, the music that was playing over it was by Dua Lipa, and that goddess should have nothing to do with whatever the fuck this thing is. I don't know where that chap is from, but in the UK, if you record someone without their consent and then post the footage online, that's an offence. However, it's nowhere near as offensive as that guy's makeup. He hasn't got the hang of doing it yet, because the foundation looks like it's been applied by a pissed-up plasterer. And I've never drawn on my eyebrows, but if I were to do so, I wouldn't use a brush usually used to apply paste to wallpaper. I think what we've seen today are people determined to find fault even when there is none, because basically they've got sod all better to do with their time. That's almost the end of this video. Almost, but not quite, because I have a quick update. Recently, I posted on Facebook and YouTube an apology, and I made my one ever serious video. The reason for that was someone was trying to get me cancelled. Happily, I have an update. What had happened was that someone and I'm praying that someone is watching this video right now because I know your fucking name, had contacted a venue where I was to be performing, saying that I have a YouTube channel which is transphobic. Now that's bullshit. I'm not transphobic or homophobic or racist or any of the isms. What I do, as we've just seen, is I find clips of people making themselves look fucking stupid on the internet, and then I rip the piss out of them. But this stunt backfired spectacularly. I've never been so welcome to any venue because the staff there had watched some of my videos, and one of the staff is a trans woman who confirmed that I don't say anything transphobic. So this is my preemptive strike. If that person or any person tries that stunt again, I'll have you for fucking slander. Anyway, that is the end of this video. If you enjoyed it, please do like and subscribe if you haven't already. Leave a comment because it helps the algorithm, and as ever, thanks for watching. I haven't read that book, nor do I intend to, because I suspect it's nothing more than blatant race baiting. Fucked up. What's happening for our new friend is that, given that she hasn't eaten for a good 20 minutes, she started to panic. Swat, man. The delusions people will kid themselves with, because that woman there can go to a shop and say, do you have something in a 5-foot waist? God. Ugh. Oh, fuck it. I've got a very sensitive gag reflex. It's a good job I'm not gay. And men who are really into that. How would he go about having sex with that woman? To get to her vagina, you need to, shutter the fat away like you're digging a fucking trench. These days, the narrative is that transgender people will... I can't read my own fucking writing.